This podcast is a production of TSA Arts Watch.
From the very beginning, TSA has made it their mission to create their own path and make connections within the community. This DIY spirit has allowed us to thrive and grow exponentially, not only as a school, but within our specific departments.
In this episode, we take a backstage look at our theater department and explore some of the first TSA productions and how we have developed our production schedule over the years. My name is Lucas.
My name is Tabitha, and we would like to welcome you to this episode of the TSA Beat, Behind the Scenes.
So when we opened the school, we were operating on 2 floors of a big office building that had, kind of deteriorated over the years. And we were still building out the classrooms when we started school. So we didn't have a performance venue at all within the space, except for there was a big empty space, unconstructed space on the ground floor of the building.
We didn't have lights. I think we just used a boombox playback for recordings so that dancers could dance. But we had small music groups, a group of initial guitar players and a small band or orchestra. But those were really the first performances of TSA. Once we started thinking in terms of kaleidoscope, the first one we did was at one of the downtown churches. It worked well because the acoustics were good, and so although we only had 3 violin players, it sounded much bigger than that. I think that initially we moved much of the shows, Kaleidoscope included, to Lourdes College, kind of in Lourdes College's heyday.
All right, well, early productions at TSA for me began before I was an employee at TSA. I got a call from the choir director at TSA saying, I need a pianist for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and would you be willing to help us out? And I said, sure, give me the dates and the performances and all that, and I'll look at my calendar. So he gave me all that. I'm like, I'm free. And I said, when do rehearsals start? He goes, in about 15 minutes. I go, okay. So I hopped in my car and I flew downtown to, TSA was in the old Secor Hotel. So we rehearsed there for a while, moved it into the Rep, because I think at that time there was a collaboration with the Rep. That's how early that partnership was. And we performed the show at the Rep. I remember they gave me a kid who knew how to play drums. I think that's it. I think that's the only other person that played with me on that show.
We had started with just 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, and none of them had, ever performed with each other or been in groups before. Some of them were beginners at what they were doing. So we didn't really have anything to present. So in December of the first year that we were operating, I thought it would work best to just get the 1 or 2 numbers that each class could put together and just mash them together for a concert. And we called it Kaleidoscope because when I had been in college, the music department at the college did a Kaleidoscope concert.
It came from a meeting we had, Marty Porter and Dave Sagers, and myself and Mike Urbanski, and we were trying to come up with a fundraiser for the parents organization. So Michael said, what if we did just a talent show where the kids could come in and do different acts and stuff like that? And as we discussed it, it made more sense to highlight the different studios and the work they were doing in the studios. Yet it was a parents organization fundraiser, which was odd. And ultimately, in the 2nd or 3rd year, traded the Kaleidoscope back to the school, and we got some other fundraiser that we had done successfully for a couple of times.
So imagine that is your kaleidoscope, that you have only like 8th, 9th, and 10th graders available, or 7th through 10th graders to do the show, where today we're 6th through 12. And, our growth has also sort of expanded our expertise, even coming through the door in 6th grade. It looks very different now, and we're doing big theaters, big houses, big rentals. So our financial resources, our personnel resources. We were a school back then that, maybe had 300 people in it. The pool, it has widened and deepened over the years. And so there is the evolution of it. I remember when it was at Lord's, I still worked backstage just like I do now, but I was at the top of the staircase that led to the dressing rooms underneath, and there was no mic system at all. So if I needed a number to stage next, I was running down the stairs. I was much younger. I ran down the stairs and literally ran down the hall shouting the number, intermediate dancers to the stage, now, and running back up the stairs, and then, okay, all right, get them all on stage, and then run down and get the next. It was craziness. Good times. You've met me. I have a certain personality, and my personality is this. I'm not really a standstill person, unless that is what is actually needed in the moment. It's like a natural progression in life for me. I just always kind of end up, I can wrangle. I'm good at wrangling. This is recent years, actually, and I'm on that backstage ramp with my microphone, and I'm calling acts up, and I keep missing this set of young people, mostly musicians. They're not making my call, and I'm having to call 2 or 3 times. I'm like, this is my 3rd call. Nobody's coming. So I'm off mic now. I march downstairs, and I know what room I assign these kids to, and I pound on the door like, New York super, I pound on the door. It's Mrs. Dow. Let me in. I hear scrambling around, and somebody comes to the door, and they crack the door. They're like, yes, Miss Dow. I'm like, what is going on in here? I have called you guys to the stage. Oh, and they don't tend the door, so I throw the door the rest of the way open. There is like a 30-inch television and a game system, like a Wii. And there's this whole crowd of people that are not supposed to say, I'm like, what is happening in here? And it gets worse. I come on in the room, and back in the shower, because those single dressing rooms have bathrooms in them with like a shower and a toilet and a sink. In the shower, they have hung a hammock. Yeah, they are full on living there. They are rock stars on tour. I'm like, that's it. Right? Now, admittedly, that was funny. So now I have to literally say every year before Kaleidoscope, no game systems, no bringing in your television. And they moved in. It was their apartment. It's frustrating in the moment that you're trying to get stuff on stage, but ultimately that's hilarious. Of course they're charming kids, and they're like, Miss Dow, you can play with us if you want. I'm like, no, I'm not coming down here to play Wii. This is not how you're getting out of this. Don't Miss Dow me.
The community partner thing was kind of funny. It was a clever idea to call them partnerships, and it was an idea on our part, and I have to give Marty Porter credit for that. He was hoping that if we had a formal enough relationship with another group, or any kind of relationship at all with another group, that they would, let us put their logo on our website so it would look like we were more connected. It actually started happening that those organizations, arts organizations in town, were offering educational opportunities for students that weren't really being taken up by any other schools. So they were usually pretty eager to work with us. We did a whole bunch of stuff with the zoo. They had a theater there, so we did a couple of productions there. And we offered theater classes because they had a space that was pretty conducive for that.
we kind of had to rely on the kindness of strangers to a great degree, in that we would go to Lord's College and we'd say, gee, it'd be really great if we had some furniture for the stage. And they'd say, oh, we got some furniture. What about this? Much of the improvements in the early years were due to Lord's College or to Owens Community College or those types of venues that were, and as well as Toledo Rep, that were allowing us to use their facilities. Most of the time we paid for them. Sometimes we would swap space. But overall, those three organizations did a lot to get us to a point where we did have costumes and we did have the props, basic props we needed. And that was very important to the productions.
When we first started, everything was a pretty raw type space. That open lobby area in the Secor building, that was a totally raw space. There was a lot of energy in that and it was fun, but it was also a lower production value, and it's nice to be able to present things at the highest production values we can.
It was not uncommon for us to have opening night and still, after the show, finish painting something for the next 2 or 3 shows. And then all those people are still there doing the strike and moving stuff out. It's not unusual even today to see 4 or 5 cars parked back behind our truck, behind the stage, loading up stuff.
We didn't have a place to build backdrops and flats and things like that, and nor could we store them. And so that has evolved in a great deal from when we moved into this building and we finally had a proper theater shop to now having Zan's shop being possibly the nicest one in Toledo.
The culture surrounding technical theater is something that TSA has instilled in its students from the very beginning, and our tech program has grown exponentially over the years. As a stage manager myself, I know the emotional resilience that is required to crew a show and be a part of the magic behind the scenes.
In this section, we have tracked down and interviewed some folks within the lineage of TSA's technical theater program, exploring the trials and tribulations of working backstage, as well as the poignant mentorship relationships that have blossomed over the years.
Part of what has made our tech theater thing not be such a struggle as it once was is we gained consistency when we got Zan Campbell-Johannes.
The department was pretty small when I started, honestly, and not necessarily in terms of students that were involved, just in terms of the teachers that were here. But we didn't have a costumer at the time. We didn't have a video production, anything. In terms of curriculum that was passed down to me or anything that I could work off of, there really wasn't anything. I started creating my own stuff based off of things that I learned in high school and college, and then eventually I went through the career tech program and they gave me more ways to kind of structure my curriculum in a way that would be more beneficial to students. So I actually didn't get involved in theater till late my junior year in high school. I was a visual arts person in high school. I took all the art classes. I took community art classes. Anytime I could be painting or working with stuff, I was the kind of kid who had Legos that I would build and then take apart and then build whatever else I wanted. I had erector sets and connect sets, and I was always making something. I made a mess of my dad's workshop regularly on the weekends. My junior year, a friend of mine who was in one of the school plays said, "Hey, we need some help painting this backdrop. Could you come after school and help us? We know you're a good painter." I said, "Yeah, sure." And I kind of just fell in love because there was oh, I can create this thing and someone gives me a structure for what I need to create. I don't have to necessarily always come up with my own ideas, and then I can move on to the next cool thing without having to spend so much time on it. My brain moves very quickly. I don't have a lot of fun staying on one project for months and months and months. So it was kind of the perfect matchup of what my interests were and what my general personality was. There are some students that come to me already saying, "This is what I want to do, no questions asked, put me in, coach." There's other students that come to me from the performance side of things and are "Yeah, I tried that for a moment, but that's not my thing anymore, and I'd rather be involved in a different way." And that gives them a nice opportunity.
I remember the moment, this was the first time where I feel like somebody gave me a huge opportunity because they saw the potential in me. I was auditioning for The Secret Garden, and I got 2 callbacks, and I was really excited. I was in the 8th grade, and then 2 callbacks, I didn't get in at all. And I remember exactly where I was in Miss Quinlan's room. She's like, "Hey, sorry you didn't get in. Would you be interested in becoming assistant stage manager?" And I'm like, oh my God, that's such a cool title. I don't really know what that is, but I'm so in. So I went on board, and at the time, Becca Young was the resident stage manager. And I immediately looked up to her because, one of those people who looks like she has it all together, was probably only like 16 or 17 at the time. But to me, she was like, that's who I want to be,
So I actually acted for 5 years before I did technical theater, and I would see the people do technical theater, and I took a technical theater camp one summer because I wanted to paint, and there was more than painting, but I wanted to paint, and I actually really enjoyed it. So I kind of started doing technical theater then. I was 11. And then I came to TSA, still coming to TSA for acting. And after my first year at TSA, I started technical theater here.
When I first started here, the seniors that were here my first year, there was a lot of tension there because they're like, oh, well, you're not the guy we had before, which I get. Like, it's hard to pass over a program like that when you're used to a certain person and a certain way of doing things. But that really made me realize that I could instill that in the students that I have, and not necessarily like, oh, this is the way Teach does things and what Teach says we can do, but in a way that gives other people ownership of the work they're doing and the program that we have. I have a general meeting with my stage managers at the beginning of the year, and I show them the basic ropes, but then I really, really rely on my junior and senior stage managers to pass the skills and the mindset and the entire way of doing things onto the freshmen, sophomores who have come up. And I've tried to create this kind of rotating mentorship almost with my students. I really love the idea of like a lineage where it kind of gets passed out. Like I can follow my stage managers specifically and who trained who and where that kind of passed along into the different styles that people pick up from the people who taught them.
I was a musical theater major in middle school, and then you need to take other theater classes, so I took production tech COVID year, which was the year we did Something Rotten, and I did deck crew for Something Rotten and loved it. I really liked it and decided to switch my major over that year. Curious Incident, which was the play that we did my sophomore year, and I was just like, hey, that's something I'm interested in. And I had helped with a couple of First Fridays. Like, I kind of knew a little bit about stage management, but that was my first opportunity to do like a bigger show, and I think that just kind of opened up the doors for me. Seniors and sophomores, like juniors and freshmen, kind of almost pair together. Agnes Johnson, she was my assistant stage manager for Schoolhouse, and she's a sophomore now, and I kind of trained her in a way. Teach kind of wants it to be like a system like that, where it's like you learn freshman, sophomore year, and then you teach junior, senior year.
You don't have to wait to be great. There are students here that are, locking stuff down as 7th graders and 8th graders that are just wowing us at Kaleidoscope, and you're like, holy smokes, we get 5 more years of this or 4 more years of this, and really exciting to see how that comes up. And that raises the bar for everybody, I think. The crews I've worked on that have been the best crews over time were the crews that sort of developed their own identity as a group that was more than the sum of its parts, right? So everybody on the crew could be great at what they were doing and how they did it, but somehow when everybody was working together and communication was good, what the results were beyond what you could expect from just 6 people doing a thing.
I think I've always been a very open and willing person, always ready to jump in and help, and that's the basis of doing a tech, It's not like you're coming to TSA thinking, I'm gonna major in carrying things. There was this one time at the rep where we were actually able to have some downtime to just joke around, and it was me and the Goofy Boys and just everybody on headset. We felt so cool, and somehow we started breaking out into this drive-through role play. So one of us was the cashier taking the person's order, and it was like a McDonald's situation. And they're like, yeah, can I get a can I get a Whopper? Can I get 10 more Whoppers? I don't even know what we were saying, but it was incredible. And it was like 10, 15-minute thing. And eventually we had to be like, okay, we're fine. But stuff like that always happened, and it was so goofy. And I feel like we were always laughing because we became one big happy family. And we were able to snap at each other sometimes, but also, we're so funny. Probably some of the funniest people that I still am friends with today, I did tech with. The other thing that's really stuck with me is that we would call sawdust shop spice. Me and my Gen Z people would be like, that looks real tasty. I want to munch on that. I want to munch and crunch on that spice. Because we were totally breathing it in all the time. I love it. I think joking about eating things is hilarious.
If we're bored in the booth and we all got headsets on still, it's a fun time in there. Honestly, it's a fun time in there. I mean, I sat in the booth with Bader. You were in the booth for a little bit of it, with Bader for an hour and discussed what the difference between stairs and ladders were. We still don't know. There's not one defining factor that defines a stair and a ladder. And Bader's gonna hear this. I'm gonna get a text and he's be like, Sydney, what is wrong with you? Why are you talking about our stairs and our ladders?
We've built a very good team. Us two, Agnes and Sarah, are the theatrical design class this year. And every single one of us is stage managed. Every single one of us has done various positions, and we have people that are more comfortable in the booth, more people that are comfortable backstage, and it's a very well-rounded team.
I feel like a cast can develop certainly its own identity and its own personality, but the way that those pieces interact is not exactly the same as what happens for a good, tight crew that's being well-run and disciplined and is having fun. They all know their jobs. I also think that it's really, really beneficial for tech people that have experience on stage in any kind of way as a performer, because they can appreciate why what they're doing is important. They know a lot about where to be and where not to be on stage at any given time. And conversely, I think it really behooves actors to spend some time working in a technical role, even if they don't want to do it forever, to appreciate what has to happen for them to get their moment on stage too.
Since I've acted in the past, I have a different kind of appreciation for everything that's going on, because it's like I know how scary that would be as an actor if somebody didn't lock your platform, or if something wasn't placed in the right spot and you were like potentially going to get hurt or anything like that. Like that would be a scary moment, and you're on stage and you wouldn't know what to do.
If you play video games, you know that in a lot of video games, there are traits that have values, and these values, you only get a certain amount of all your traits, right? And so for one, it might be strength might be at 99 and their speed might be, at a 15, right? And so I think of it, it's the same kind of way when you have a crew or when you're working tech. You want to be strong in a lot of different ways, right? You want to be able to think big picture. But that is not everybody's role is to be thinking big picture at the same time. It's really helpful to have people that are just like, tell me what to do. I'm going to do the next thing that's right in front of me. Because those people, because they get single focused on that stuff and they're ready to hear from somebody who's leading that crew, they are going to immediately apply themselves to it.
I think the best ones, they walk a fine line between being a peer and being somebody who commands that respect when it is time. But they also, they know, again, how to toe that line between like a director and where they are at that moment. Olivia Anderson is just such a great example because she was so good at that. Like she knew how to she knew each of the students. She knew how to pass on notes. She was extremely organized. She was dedicated. She led by example. And the best stage managers that we have do that. But they also know how to get along with their friends. Like we're still at school. This is not our professional world. But when it's time to get down to business, they will command that respect. And some other ones I would like to name drop. I mean, Becca Young was phenomenal. Patchett, Natalie Gray, Tabitha's incredible. I think back to Curious, where we had to learn QLab together, and I was like, I don't even know what QLab is, but let's figure it out. And we were there working together, learning together, and that's just an incredible experience, I think, for us, because we never walk in pretending to know it all, and I think that's a good life lesson for kids. And it's amazing because a lot of people will be like, well, Zan does the whole show, right? And that's not the case. It's the kids. The stage managers are calling. They are making sure the light cues. They're telling Zan what to do, on the deck. So it's like they find this thing within them where they are able to take over the show. Because we always say, it's once opening night hits, it's not the director's show anymore. It's the stage managers, and the tech crew, and they have it all under control. Lord knows I'm not a crisis person, so I'm going to let my stage manager take the reins on that, if something happens. So it's really neat to see.
I mean, most people who do our jobs in other schools also make the costumes and paint the sets, and they have to figure out where the music is going to come from, and they have to make the program, and they're working the box office. So we're incredibly fortunate that we are doing things at least on a representative professional level, and everybody's got their responsibilities. We have every opportunity to show technical theater students that they are as valuable as actors, and so many people, think of theater as just the part they see and experience and they're entertained by. But I do think we have the very unique opportunity to show that it's all art, it's all different forms of art. Like, whatever your art is, we need you.
I was, for a long time, pursuing perfection, and it's elusive. It's not going to be there. I was not appreciating the value of process. That arrived late for me, right? I just wanted to be able to do it as right as I could, right? And that became what I was going after, and that's a losing battle. The whole production, no matter what it is moving faster than our ability to explain what has to happen next, which is why we have rehearsal, which is why we try to prepare, which is why we have plans, which is why we have somebody calling the show, all of those things, right? So learning that shorthand can be critically important. There's more than one way to be led. How flexible am I as a follower? Am I requiring somebody to speak my language before I do my job to the fullest? Because you're going to learn a lot, you're going to grow a lot faster if you're like, I may not understand everything, but I did understand what I was asked to do, so I'm going to go do it, and then I will start to understand why it was told to me that way. I will start to see how it fits in the bigger picture.
Last year, when during Addams Family, the large crypt that was supposed to fly in and out broke midair. It got caught on a door, and everything really fell apart, and I had to rush on stage during the blackout and literally hold up this massive structure while yelling into headset, trying to get Tabitha to take care of something backstage and the stage manager to hold the lights so I could figure things out. And thankfully, only half the audience noticed somehow, miraculously. But in the moment and during the show, there was no processing that. Once I got that done and I caught my breath, it was like, okay, we keep going. I can't let that affect the rest of the show. If I do, everything will fall apart. Wearing exhaustion like a badge of honor is something that I want to remove from my program. And there's sometimes going to be times where we are exhausted. Tech Week is grueling just for the sake of what it is. And the rehearsal process is tiring. And there's only so much we can do to stop that and change that. But we can change the way we approach it. We can change the way we take care of ourselves. We can change the way how hard we push ourselves. I don't want my tech scouts to have an exhaustion badge.
With the new school year comes new challenges, but also new opportunities. This year, we have the addition of our new Black Box Theater.
As this is our first year officially with the Black Box, we are still developing new ideas and creative ways in which we can utilize the space. The future is bright.
In terms of possibilities with the new space, the one thing I really love about black box spaces is just the flexibility. It allows, and I know that's kind of inherent in what the definition of that is, but it means that we can play around with the way we give the audience an experience, with the way that the actors understand their performance, with cool things that technicians haven't been able to experience before. There's a whole lot that I think it opens up for a larger creative process, and that's what I'm excited about. Having a space here means that I can have my design class go down and work on something during the school day and not necessarily have to say, all right, sorry, well, you gotta come after school and we're gonna try and fit this in and it's gonna be a little hectic. I've seen so many other programs here like just flourish and grow exponentially. And my program's always been kind of small, partially because I know it's an intense program and it does cater to a certain kind of personality and skill set. But I'm hoping to be able to draw more people in with that creative process and that creative opportunity moving forward.
So one of my hopes is that with the finishing of the black box, you know, we've already talked a lot about trying to have high school theater on a college level. It's my opinion that you don't get to work in a black box until you're in college. And now we have a black box. So it seems to me that from a technical side as well as a theatrical and musical side, you know, kind of the sky is the limit at this point, and it gives us just one more arrow in our quiver.
Maybe to play devil's advocate a little bit, because I can remember back to some theater department meetings where I probably very jokingly would say on a fairly regular basis, if we only had our own theater. But if we had our own theater, well, why don't we could just build our own theater? And Sagers would tell me, well, that'll be about $10 million, so that's never going to happen. And then I would back off. But then he did say, in all seriousness, he says, it's not necessarily going to solve the problems you are personally having right now. He said, because if we did have our own theater, sure, you'd get to use it for rehearsal and performance, but so will percussion, and so will dance, and so will strings, and so will jazz and pop combo and everything else. And he said, so having our own space isn't necessarily going to solve all those problems. Plus, he pointed out the fact that we work at so many different spaces in the community is the most phenomenal education, primarily for our tech students, because we couldn't begin to replicate all of those different experiences, all those different levels of technology, all those different types of spaces here in one building. So in a way, I hope we never lose that element of doing our performances elsewhere in the community. But yeah, so we have this really awesome new space, and it's like a new toy, and there's 5 kids, and I feel like we all want to name the puppy, and we're all already fighting over it. So I think it's just going to be a learning and growing year. It's super cool. It looks amazing. It has endless possibility, and now we have to figure out how to share it. So I don't think we fought quite so hard over the old toys as we are over the new toys. It is incredibly exciting to have a blank canvas to design in, as opposed to knowing the limitations of like the Rep or Owens, like what you can and cannot do.
Yep.
It is really exciting to think about a completely moldable space.
I don't have a dream show. And I know that's going to sound weird because I know it seems like everybody does, but I have dream concepts. I like high concept theater, and it's really not what we do here. And I'm hoping maybe we can do more with that space, but I like things that aren't steeped in realism. I like things that are a little bit weird. I like things that are super kind of high artistic flair, if that makes sense. I want to do something with mirrors. I want to do something with like a circus collaboration. I want to do something that has a whole bunch of ramps, you know, stuff like that, where it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a particular show, but I want it to be pulled from the meaning, the meat of that. I have a big passion about visual literacy, and it's something that I like really get into in my classes. But the idea that we all see things in our day-to-day life and we assign meaning to them on a second-to-second basis. Sometimes it's very literal, sometimes it's a little more societal, conceptual. And I really want to tap into those psychological things that the human mind starts making connections with to create a more immersive, more full body, full mind experience for the person watching it.
Like what Juliet was saying with this new black box, this idea almost to go back to the simple nature of what TSA kind of started as, and this like endless possibility of what could be, and getting back to the root of theater and technology and what we can create on our own, I just think is a really cool concept that I'm excited for, you know, as a director, because that pushes our creativity too.
The TSA Beat is a production of Toledo School for the Arts and is available on TSA streaming service ArtsWatch. You can find other TSA productions and performances on ArtsWatch by visiting ts4arts.org. That's ts4arts.org. Or find us on favorite social media outlets.
Special thanks to all of our guests, TSA faculty and staff, Olivia Anderson, Devin Bader, Zan Campbell-Johannes, Jamie Dowell, Sydney Felt, Rob Koenig, Amelia Lefevre, Juliet Quinlan, Tabitha Romer, Evelyn Sanford, and David Stegers.
Music and score provided by Dream Louder, Gerald Edward, Lauren Balthrup, and Lucas Madrazo.
This episode was written and produced by Tabitha Romer and Lucas Madrazo. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in next time.